And so make sure that you're working with what they're working with, and not your own story. I also want to say that this is an experiment. Okay, I'm a big fan of group presentations. I think it is a really important learning experience. And these two young people asked me if they could present together because their topics were linked. And I said, I think that sounds like a great idea. Let's try it. So I encourage you to, if you're an adult in the room who's doing an evaluation, give some feedback about how well you think that works, because in the future I'd like to encourage more students to try this. I think it's something that works really well and is a great learning experience. Okay? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the presenters.
Picture this. You wake up early in the morning to get dressed. You can't shower because today is Friday, and where you live, you only get water on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. You walk for what seems forever before reaching your destination, school. As you enter the classroom, you notice that all the desks are taken. There aren't enough chairs for the 60 students in your class. You take the cement block, which will be your seat for the next 8 hours, and move it where you can see the
10 minutes after you get there, you are already drenched in sweat, as there is no air conditioner and the fans have been broken for months. Your teacher is late again, so there is no adult supervision and no control of what is going on. When your teacher finally arrives, 30 minutes late, you take out the notebook that you use for all your classes and write May 6, 2016 at the top of your last blank page. Good morning. This term for our SE, we decided to research about the public school system in the Dominican Republic. So welcome. This is Sabotaging Your Home, how the Dominican Republic's educational system constrains our country's potential.
The Dominican Republic has many issues regarding its public education system. Katie Manning states some of these in her essay. The Dominican Republic struggles with overcrowded classrooms and shoddy facilities. There's a high dropout rate, an outdated curriculum, overage students who fail classes and have to repeat grades, amongst other problems. But perhaps the most worrying issue is poorly trained teachers. All of these small conflicts all add up to the larger issue, the inadequate public education that is provided in the Dominican Republic. As shown here, you can see how the primary school enrollment rate in the United States is 90% and the Dominican Republic is 86%. But what's most shocking is how the dropout rate is much more than double. In secondary school, there's an 88% enrollment rate in secondary school. And in the Dominican Republic, there's only a 40%.
A major problem is that the Ministry of Education has failed to manage and allocate the resources properly. A few years back, many campaigned for the rightful 4% towards education, of 4% of the gross domestic product towards education. Successfully, this act has been implemented and now is enforced by law. However, the government is still failing to use this newly acquired money wisely. For example, while I was researching, I encountered data from the 2015's investment in education. What I found was that the government only spent 15% of the portion of its budget that was to be invested towards reconstruction in their first trimester. With a budget of $520 million appropriated for reconstruction, the government only used $81 million into repairing the infrastructure where many of the country's poor kids attend.
Not only is not enough money being spent, but also the money that is being spent is being used poorly. Education expert Katie Manning stated, efforts aren't unequal. Construction gets 4 times more money than teacher training and hiring. Even though construction can be considered a vital factor to improving the education system, investing the majority of the money to one factor is not beneficial, since it leaves the rest of the factors that will improve the system behind. The bad distribution of these resources is known to worsen the already flawed public education system. Katie Manning visited a public school in Santo Domingo called Escuela República Argentina, which has about 1,000 students. There, she interviewed a teacher called Giovanni Gomez. In her article, Manning mentions how a recent study done proves that math teachers only understood 42% of the material they were supposed to be teaching. 42%. That is less than half of what they're supposed to know. Because of this leaves students unprepared and unready for whatever they decide to do next, whether it be university or work if they need to.
Apart from a lack of preparation, many teachers are often discouraged by the government's deficient salary. Many teachers feel they are paid way below average, some even forced to obtain a secondary job. Now, with this secondary job, teachers cannot focus entirely on education, failing to prepare their classrooms and their schedules, causing mayhem and disaster in their classrooms. As well, another major problem in the Dominican schools is that classrooms are often overcrowded, forcing many students to use the equipment on the floor as improvised seats. Meanwhile, others rely on the basic floor to sit during lectures. Without the proper circumstances, these kids will never fully grasp what is being taught. Therefore, many of these students, unwilling to learn in this environment, throw away their education.
As shown in the picture above, there is barely enough room to fit all the students in the room, much less to have them sit in desks and chairs. An overcrowded and overpopulated classroom can lead to distraction and much less attention paid to the teacher and the material being taught. Due to the fact that the classrooms are so overpopulated, there is also an issue in regard to student-teacher relations. On average, there are about 25 students for every teacher in the Dominican Republic, as shown in the graphic. This is believed to limit the potential of education. In comparison to the Dominican Republic, Portugal has a standard ratio of 7 students per teacher, and Puerto Rico has 13. The United States, as you can see here, is much less as well.
You may think that 25 students per teacher, may seem similar to this local school. However, this is just a national average. A study by the education expert, Katie Mann, suggests that in public with over 500 students, the student-to-teacher ratio increases to 78%, to 78 students per teacher.
In a classroom where there are 78 students with just one adult, it is impossible for things to be in control. This also leads to teachers being unable to give individual attention to the students. If a student is struggling with a subject or anything, it's impossible for the teacher to personally help each one of the 78 students in the classroom. This leads to the students having more difficulties and each difficulty adding up and leading to less education.
Another problem that cripples our education system is the defective infrastructure of the present schools. Throughout the Dominican Republic, it is visible how the government has allowed many of these public schools to deteriorate. These photos are just a few of the schools located in rural towns of the country.
The pictures presented here explain themselves. The materials and processes that are used to build these schools are extremely inefficient and have in result created improper environments and surroundings for student learning. Now we will present a video to show you what schools in the Dominican Republic.
As we peek into some of the other classes, you will see similar things. Plain, basic classrooms, kids in uniforms, a teacher, a chalkboard, and hopefully some chalk. Here in the Dominican Republic, a teacher is lucky if he or she has enough chalk for the day. School supplies are a very precious resource, and most schools and teachers probably don't have as many supplies as is your school. The students at this school come each day with a notebook and a pen. Around the back of the school, you will find bathrooms. There is a boys' stall and a girls' stall. But these bathrooms are more like outhouses. There is usually no toilet paper and no running water in public school bathrooms. Just imagine not being able to wash your hands or flush the toilet.
So now we'll present the solutions that the government is currently implementing to solve the issue.
Presently, the government has embarked on many different construction projects in order to combat the failing education system. The plan was to build 28,000 new schools by the end of 2016. Regardless, researchers from the literary magazine, The Business Year, have demonstrated how the majority of these schools currently funded are built in remote, underserved rural sectors of the country, where the amount of schools surpass the amount of kids in necessity. This affirms the speculation that the government's blind investments are actually harming our education system instead of benefiting.
The Dominican government has also proposed to create after-school programs and to lengthen school days to full 8-hour days, also called la tanda extendida. To an outside eye, this might seem as an adequate solution. However, a survey done by United States Agency for International Development found that students only learn for 2 hours and 40 minutes of the full school day. Research also concluded that teachers in countries studying, the Dominican Republic included, spend 65% or less of time class for instruction, which is an equivalent of losing a full day of class during the week. Lastly, the government also implemented the program Quisqueya Aprende Contigo. This program was implemented with the intent to alphabetize people who haven't been able to go to school or haven't been able to learn to read or write. Even though the program is directly mostly to adults, it is a good way for the government to take initiative in educating the country as a whole. But the question is, are they doing enough?
We believe that this problem, however, can be solved. The key is that the government must improve their distribution of assets in order to create a meaningful and long-lasting impact on the nation's education system. Starting off by teacher training. In her visit to Dominican Republic, Ruth Kramer interviewed Jeff Vandermolen from Kids International Alive. Kids International Alive is a program which is now working here in the Dominican Republic, creating schools and after-school programs to educate children. Not only do they educate children, but they also train their teachers. Vandermolen mentioned, we realize that the quality of our education is very tied to the quality of our teachers. So we invest heavily on our teachers and our teacher training program. Because Kids Alive invest in the teachers, therefore the teachers invest in their students. By the Dominican government investing in these training programs, such as Kids Alive's 3-year teacher training program, they're in turn investing on their students, which would therefore contribute positively to the future of our country. Another substantial portion of the budget should be allocated towards the purchase of essential materials that are fundamental for learning. These materials include desks to sit on, boards to teach with, notebooks, and textbooks to learn from. We believe that students attending public schools deserve the use of proper materials while learning and preparing for their future. Simultaneously, it is important to maintain the investment towards remodeling and rebuilding of the present schools. After finishing the construction projects, the government must emphasize on improving those schools that are already in use. Many of these schools are in disastrous conditions and the infrastructure is archaic. So instead of building new schools in the distance, the government should work to reconstruct those schools in use right now.
Another possible and effective solution is the increase of teacher salaries and wages. In the Dominican Republic, the average pay for inexpensive rent and food monthly is around $500 to $650. However, the government's base salary for public education teachers is $344 a month, or approximately $4,000 a year. This evidently shows how teachers are unable to live comfortable lives with their salaries that are currently paid. Not only will you be improving their lives and allowing them to maintain their own families, you will also be increasing their motivation to teach. There are various psychological studies that show a positive correlation between salaries and motivation. And it will also allow them to depend on their wages from teaching and not have to look for other jobs on the side, which they will be able to dedicate more time to the education of our children. Now, reimagine yourself as the kid introduced in the beginning of our presentation. After 2.5 hours of class, your teacher dismisses you, saying there is nothing more to teach. In those 2 short hours, you learned 4 subjects: math, writing, science, and history. Your day is now 8 hours long, so you spend the remaining of the day doing nothing at home. Your teacher leaves early for their second job, leaving the class unsupervised.
When you worry out, you notice a huge commotion in the hallway. 2 students are fighting. This has become a part of the daily life at school, so you're not surprised. As you leave school with the pain of your lower back from sitting on a cement block the entire day, you feel as anything you learned was valuable, as you just wasted one more school day. And in fact, it's not that you are failing school, but rather that your school is failing you. Thank you.
You have any questions?
You say that 4% that is currently being allocated is at par with the global standard.
Well, I believe that many countries are investing more than 4%. For example, the United States invests more, Sweden, and all those countries in the European region, they invest more. However, what I truly believe is that this country, with its 4%, can do way more than what they're doing right now. They just need to better allocate and distribute them.
How can we ensure that teacher training and other programs like that work? Because, for example, Quisqueya Aprende Contigo, the other day there was a problem with that the regulation was not real.
The thing with Quisqueya Aprende Contigo is it is a government directive. So as we all know, the government here isn't the most effective. But the program that we mentioned from Kids Alive, they have a 3-year program, and afterwards they give like a test to the teachers to see if they're capable to teach and if they have learned what they need to learn. And I think that's more efficient because since it is like privately managed and they have like standards, I think that will work better than it's like managed by the government.
Can you explain to me what the scandal was? I just want to make sure I understand that question.
The program Quisqueya Aprende Contigo that I mentioned, they alphabetize people. And they were conducting like a graduation of people that had finished the program. And it was done by Roberto Salcedo, like the mayor of Santo Domingo. And there were like 2,500 people in the graduation. But many people that were interviewed were like, they had no idea what was going on. They were like, no, a friend invited me. I had no idea, I've never done this program. People asked, like, is your friend a politician? Like, yeah, they work for the PLD party. So they were like faking that the program was like graduating 2,500 people, but in reality it wasn't.
Okay.
Do you think the problem with teachers not being paid enough is mostly because of a misallocation of money, or is it because teachers are traditionally like undervalued, basically?
I think it's both. I think because not only in the Dominican Republic do teachers have low salaries, I think it's also a problem present in the United States and many other countries. But I think if there was a better like management of the money, then there would be a less of a problem. Yes.
I know that the Dominican government offers like big grants for teachers, they travel overseas to do teacher training. Did you find any research on that and how successful that is when they return to the country and provide programs?
Sadly, I did not focus on that aspect of the investigation. However, what I read was that there was a program about trying to increase teacher training, but it said that it wasn't starting in the beginning of 2017. That they're just developing this program, and now it's that they're going to move forward with. So I don't have information.
So las pruebas nacionales, which we all have taken China basically, are supposed to prove or show what we learned in the 1 and 8th grade, like in middle school and going in senior year or your high school year. So do you think these exams are actually proving what you're supposed to have learned for these kids who are in public schools?
I think that this exam is a perfect representation of how poorly teachers are doing their jobs in the school. Many students fail to pass the exam in the 3rd chance they get. What that means is that teachers at school, they're not preparing their kids properly. And that's what lets us know that the system has to change.
Not only does this show that the teachers are prepared, but it also shows how they're not motivated. Because as we all know, while we were there, teachers that were like proctoring the exams they weren't very strict, they weren't following rules. I've heard stories of cheating in the pruebas nacionales. So it not only shows their lack of preparation, but also, as we mentioned, how a little motivated.
On that same subject, right now, education in general is changing in that suddenly standardized tests aren't the best way to measure what the student is actually learning. So the grade isn't actually an accurate representation of the knowledge that the student acquired during a period of time. So taking this into consideration and Mani Cruz's question, do you think that this is actually the correct way to measure how efficient the teachers are being? It's just something I'm throwing out there because we know this is, especially in Dominican public education, is not, we don't have the best education here. But how can you put those things together?
What I believe is that there is no correlation between intelligence and knowledge. Because a kid may as well be the brightest kid there, but if he does not do well in school, his knowledge as represented by the pruebas nacionales is gonna seem really low standard. So I guess that's what you're saying. Because a teacher might not be properly teaching you the correct subjects that are then tested in the pruebas nacionales. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not doing a great job making students bright and intelligent. However, one of their primary jobs of the teachers is to teach them knowledge. So if people can't get proper scores, well, and the things that they're supposed to retain, the knowledge that they're supposed to learn throughout the years, then there's where the problem is demonstrated. And it's not just intelligence, but the lack of knowledge in these kids is what's disastrous.
This is the final question.
I wonder if in your research you find the percentage of teachers, Dominican, the Dominican system, that are actually professional, and also if you have some possible solution or a possible breakdown for them to acquire the skills they need to do the job properly.
I don't have the exact percentage, I couldn't find that. But as we mentioned, the way for them to be properly trained and to actually know how to teach and what they need to teach is by the programs. Because and also I think a good solution would be hiring more teachers. I read something how they were hiring international teachers from Costa Rica and different Latin countries, which I think would also help since they might come in more prepared. But for the teachers that are currently teaching, the best solution is just to implement programs like the Kids Alive International, which trains them for 3 or 5 years, whatever they need, in order for them to be successful in teaching.
But the problem is, a teacher right now is paid really poorly. So why would an educated professional teacher from the exterior countries would want to come and teach here when here you get a base salary of only $300? That is not enough to make a living. And that's why, and there was a study that correlated how many teachers are leaving their profession to move from public to private schools. And the result was that around 20% of teachers were transferring from the public school system to the private school system just based on salary.
Excellent.